hear me? Has changed something since I showed. Maybe that's the reason. Let's see now. Do you hear me better? Yes, better, much better. Yes, no? I see Geraldine is hearing me. Okay. I see Lucia is also nodding, so I hope you can hear me. Give me a sign if you want. Yes, so that we can fix it. Yes, so we will start first. We want to ask you a few questions, much better. So we have a slider for you. Where are you connecting this morning? Are you connecting from home office or from the office, the physical office? Let's see. I will share the screen and you'll get the details in the chat box right now. Let's see. Yes, so you can either type, just click on the link, or you type in slido.co, and the code for the conference is human rights. It should take you directly to our question, and you'll be able to see, and you can choose between the options. We see a lot of people from the home office and from the physical office. That's very good to have you all with us, regardless where you are from. We see a lot of more people are in the home office, so that really shows the continuous restrictions and lockdowns across Europe. Great, so now that you are still connected to Slido, let's move to the topic of our conference today. Our webinar is human rights in cities. We want to ask you, what do fundamental rights mean to you? Tell us in one word or one phrase, and we'll have a beautiful word cloud here. So what do fundamental rights mean to you? Just write keywords. We have the first entries: liberty, human dignity, equality, human rights, equality. Excellent. If you just joined now, please join us at slido.com. The code of the conference is human rights, #human rights. And tell us, what do fundamental rights mean to you? Now you can see on the screen equality, dignity, human dignity, and some guarantees. Let's try to get at least 20 entries to see this beautiful word cloud. Yes, I can see also liberty, security, and safety. Modernity, inclusion, very good as well. So far, so good. Anyone else wants to chip in? What do fundamental rights mean to you? Let's see. Okay, and there we have it, DNA of our city. So somebody also linked it with the city, thank you, and consensus, freedom, very good. We have in the center dignity, equality, and a lot of other keywords that we can use for the conference. Thank you so much to everyone. Now we are good to start our webinar today. Thank you all for being here. It's a pleasure to be with you today. There are still more colleagues joining. We have 55 people registered from 30 different cities. So it's a huge interest, and that really shows how important this topic is now to discuss human rights in our cities. My name is Bianca Faragao, and most of you know me. I'm the policy advisor responsible for social affairs of Eurocities. And many of your cities are active in the social affairs and in Eurocities as members. Thanks a lot for joining and for being interested in this important topic. We have with us cities that are already human rights cities. Very pleased to have Vienna with us, Barcelona, colleagues from Utrecht and York. Also, we have cities interested to become a human rights cities, colleagues from Bergen in Norway, from Turku in Finland, and some cities in Turkey also looking into this opportunity, and cities that have done concrete work on different human rights in cities. Many of you, I'm sure, Oslo, Stuttgart, Bilbao, Barcelona, many. So you all work in cities. Your cities and your work addresses many fundamental rights, human rights. Let's just think of the right to food and the food aid during the pandemic to help the vulnerable groups, the right to education, right to work, right to health, right to shelter for the homeless, for example, and for others. The pandemic has just clearly shown that cities have a very big role, and we're stepping up the role to safeguard human rights and protect all citizens, including the most vulnerable ones. And over the last years, we know the developments of in some member states, in some countries in Europe. And yes, I think that's also showing that cities can be counterbalancing and really protecting human rights when the national governments maybe are not following a good path. So the concept of human rights is new, maybe as a human rights city is new. From Argentina in 1997, that's when it started, and it was brought to Europe shortly after. First city becoming a human rights city was Graz, and now we have more and more cities applying. But there's still a little bit of a discussion what is to be a human rights city. We need to, there's not, let's say, a clarification or a harmonization. That's why we're here today to discuss the EU framework of commitments for human rights city. And that's why we are very pleased to have with us the EU's Agency for Fundamental Rights, that is working to develop this framework of commitments for human rights. So that's a little bit of an introduction to the topic. Without further ado, we can start now, and I challenge you all to get informed, get active, and get inspired today by our speakers and by our exchanges, and why not aspire to become a human rights city yourselves. So I have now the pleasure to invite Shams Asidi, the Human Rights Commissioner of Vienna, to be the first speaker. As you see, we'll first learn from Vienna, then we'll go to the presentation from the Fundamental Rights Agency, and then we'll learn from Utrecht. We'll then open the discussion mapping, and then we'll do the conclusions. This is a bit of the agenda, but that you will have time to ask questions to all speakers after each presentation. You can also ask your questions in the chat during the presentation, and we will collect them at the end. Definitely, there's so much to learn and so much to exchange on this topic. I will share the screen, so I won't see the chat box during the presentation. My colleague Elisa will collect the questions. And yes, Shams, such a pleasure to have you with us. We are really delighted that you could join and present Vienna, a human rights city. And Vienna has done so much on human rights over the time, and you are a human rights city. The question to you is, what are the benefits to be a human rights city, and what are the responsibilities, Shams?
Exactly. Good morning, everybody. It's a great honor and pleasure for me to share our experiences today with you all. Being a human rights city, maybe just if I start with my slides, and I will come back to your question, Bianca, if it's okay for you, because more or less I will answer these questions within the presentation. But anyhow, I mean, I'm available for answering all of the questions that they're coming, since we are a human rights city, like since 5 or 6 years officially, and of course the process. So could we go to the next slide, please? You mentioned, if you speak about human rights city, there is two questions that, according to my experience, they come usually in our discussions. Why a human rights city, and what does a human rights city do? So I will try to answer these questions on hand of my presentation. We know that in the last years, the importance of local level is increasing everywhere. There is a microphone is open. I don't know. Yes. Okay. So the city, they are important. We noticed that COVID, I mean, made it. Yes. Thank you. It's much.
Shams, you are muted, I think. Yes, just a minute ago. Yes, now.
I'm not. I mean, somebody just muted me anyhow.
Now
Now
it's
it's
better. Okay, we
yes.
go back.
Thank you.
Sorry to say.
Yeah, I mean, importance of local level and COVID time, and we know that COVID time was a quite risky time for the cities to find their own ways, and we did it. Almost all of the cities in the world, and we know that there is a lot of studies on that, and even on myself, I wrote an article about Vienna, COVID, and the city, and so. And of course, we know that cities, they are just service provider, and if we talk about education, about housing, about health services, and of course, the city is the closest level of governance to the people that they live and the inhabitants of the city. And human rights and city, it's not that cities, we are human rights cities, we are nice or we are fair. No, it is our responsibility to just implement the human rights. And we do already, all of cities, the work of human rights, but we don't speak on that. And of course, promotion, protection, implementation, we have examples. But what we do need urgently is creating the culture of the human rights. And just awareness raising is a huge problem that we have for the time being for the cities. Next, please. Again, if we speak about human rights cities, we shouldn't forget that we have a remarkable milestone on that. And it was the Venice conference from UN. It was 1993. And it was a conference that just implementation of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights was really just took a shape. And we knew that at that time, violence against women is existing, but still in the structures of the United Nations, there is no special rapporteur on violence against women. And we know that 2 years later, subject gender mainstreaming or equality of the gender is a subject with Peking or Beijing conference. and or the ratification of the right of the child just was in this conference, and we know that until um, that time not the all of the countries ratified the right of the child, and now there is only one country that it's not ratified, and it is the United States. And of course, the Office of the High Commissioner of Human Rights was a quite discussion, and to having a independence of this office was question. And now we do have an Office of for High Commissioner, and we cities we started to work with them, and it is an independent office, and we know that how efficient this office is. And of course, um, the for the first time that the cities as the governance they have to start with the implementing of the human rights cities was just within this conference that the politicians, NGOs, it was about 10,000 people that they came to Vienna and discussed during this week. So we have newly from European level that Geraldine will make more clear what are they, but they are also a strategy and the charter. They are very important for us for the European cities. Next, please. But how did we start in Vienna? It was 20 years after the 1993 conference in Vienna, and we took it as an occasion. And there was a political initiative, and there was a study that analyzes our work from the public administration with the glasses of human rights in order to find out what we do and what is efficient and what's not. So this process took 2 years, 2013 and 2014. And at the end of the project, this process, the City Council of Vienna approved the declaration for being a human rights city. So we became a human rights city, but still in our structures, there was nothing from human rights city. And we established the Office of the Human Rights City in 2015. And it is my duty to just take the responsibility for implementing of the declaration. Next one, please. So declaration is a kind of guideline for our work, for human rights works. It is divided in 5 parts. It is the contents of the declaration. It is awareness raising. It is the involvement of the civil society and NGOs. It is a huge subject for all human rights cities, and we have it very intensively in our process. And again, we continue this work, and with the special projects that I will come to these projects. And of course, institutional anchoring and monitoring and implementation, I have to confess this, we have not done too much about monitoring and just implementation steps like just mechanism for monitoring or evaluation, but we work on that, and I'm sure that we will continue in the next years, specifically on these subjects. And of course, international cooperation is a huge subject for us. Yes, and again, next one, please. There is one point that if you speak about human rights cities, you shouldn't just neglect or forget this. It is a human rights-based approach. It is an instrument that gives us more or less like a guideline for us to work just alongside of this approach. And 4 pillars of this approach, they are just summary of our works in cities. It is equality and non-discrimination. We have it in equality of gender. We have it in equality of young people, elderly people, and we are lucky in city of Vienna that we are a federal state and city, and we do have our non-discrimination law and regulation also just for the city of Vienna, that it considers all ground of the discrimination and how we could just deal with discrimination in our city administration. And of course, participation is a very important subject. We had a participative process, but we started like 2 years ago with a youth participation. It is a subject future of the city, and of course, in 20 or 30 years, how our city should be developed, and the young people, more than 20,000 young people from all walks of just society, they spoke about their desires and their wishes. Transparency. If you speak about transparency, maybe it comes non-corruption in your mind, and it's right, yes. And we do have transparency for the time being as a huge subject for us in our city government, and even we do have some political structures for that. Why accountability? It is the trust of the inhabitants of cities or all of the political units to the politicians, and of course for our work for the city administration. And of course, again, promotion of the human rights education is a very important part of this human rights based approach. Next one, please. For us, human rights are a cross-cutting subject and a cross-cutting principle. What does it mean? It means it goes to all of our departments. And of course, we have some system why and how we do it. We have developed a kind of roundtables, and these roundtables is a format that we, according to the subject, we invite the NGOs and the civil society to take part in these roundtables, and then we speak about the subjects that they are urgent in our society, and we have to solve them. Sometimes they are problems, sometimes they are unconsciousness, and we prepare policy papers, and these policy papers, they go directly. I have very regularly appointment with our politicians and city government, and I present them, and we try to find subject and solutions. Like we had housing as a, I mean, human rights, or the at the beginning of the flow of the migration and just asylum seekers 2016, about the minors, unaccompanied minors, and just we try to find very urgent solutions for the subjects that for the time being it's very actual and updated in our societies. And I mentioned that we have a project that it's this real involvement of the civil society. And we know that districts, Vienna has 23 districts. We have started since 2019 on human rights in districts, and we work with 6 districts or 7 districts. They have declared themselves as a human rights district, and we try to have an action plan. We try to find out and screen all of the partners and stakeholders and civil society members and activists, even if they are individual actors in the districts, and try to work with them and try to just make their lives a little bit easier for the people. So, of course, we bring human rights for already existing process, like implementation of SDGs. It's a subject in all cities, or urban development, or smart city, or local agenda 21. And of course, we do have a very intensive collaboration with the police because of our subject that I will come to that. Next, please. So what a human rights city does or do, it is in this slide, I will tell you a little bit about our subjects that we are very intensively busy with implementing and finding ways and working on the subjects. One subject is as we heard, as a keyword, it is a security subject, security and safety. And we do have security policies and human rights, or security policies from the viewpoint of human rights, as a focus point in our Human Rights Office. And we work with NGOs. We do have some subjects like safety of women, or public spaces, or just reframing of policies in the security field, in order to look at that security is not only just combating of the criminality in the city, but social security is the most important point for us. What is social security, and how we could provide, or how could we implement the social security in our societies? Right of the child, it is a subject that we have since beginning of our just office, and even in our process, 2 years process, because we do have a lot of departments, and City of Vienna does a lot of work in this field, but like cross-cutting subjects like um, the children, or the with disabilities, for instance, what we do with the children with disabilities, or the just child trafficking. It is such a specific subject that none of the departments, they are they are specialized in this subject, but we try to bring out all of the subjects that we have in the society, but not a specific department is responsible for that. And we try to work with the daily experts, and we call the civil society and NGOs as a daily experts, that we with them and try to find solutions. Of course, human trafficking is a subject also in our cities, and in bigger cities in Europe, human trafficking. But we should speak about that, and we could, or we should bring it out from the taboo subject. And the City Council of City of Vienna, they just appointed our office, the Human Rights Office of City of Vienna, for combating, or for preventing, and for consciousness raising about human trafficking in Vienna. And all of them, all of the subjects, they go on hand for awareness raising and education. I will come to the next slide. Human rights education, how we started. We have started with schools, with the school authorities, with the teachers' education. Then we started with art and human rights in film, with young people. We started with exhibitions, with photography, with just painting. In my office, there is always an exhibition over here. And last year, because of COVID, we started a quite innovative subject in our society with Ray of Light, or Ray of Hope project, that still is going on. And we have 10 places in the cities that they are related with human rights, on the hand of light and on hand of just descriptions. We go to the society and we invite the people, even within the COVID time, they walk in the city, and for awareness raising on the human rights. What we have started is training of the employees of the City of Vienna, and it is a part of the education. Whoever that comes to the City of Vienna and just starts a career in the City of Vienna, we gave them kind of training and education on human rights. And of course, we collaborate with universities. We do have joint European projects, or just they invite us, and we have a kind of just lecture in their universities. We have started a strong collaboration with the public education centers in the city, and last but not least, the seniors in our society. And we work very much with the appointees for seniors. And we have our office open for them each year twice to come, and we do have some like workshops with the seniors. And just I brought an example for you in order to make it clear that intersectionality of human rights with different subjects like environmental protection subjects and of course social rights. And social rights, we know it is quite just approved newly from Europe. We take it the right of the child, or just we take it the social dimensions of healthy food and living environment in everybody in our society, and we combine it with human rights. And of course, we never forget the global dimension, because Vienna is a city in Europe, and Europe is, continent in the world, and we do have the just universal declaration and whatever that we work, and with UCLG or collaborations, or just with FRA. Many thanks. It is the end of my presentation. Thank you for attention, and I'm happy for questions.
Thank you so much, Shams. That was such an excellent overview to start with our discussion and our overview, and such a great example of Vienna, how you work with human rights. Thank you for starting from the starting point. Yeah, I noticed that it was a long process that started from the political initiative of your city council, and then the setup of your Office of Human Rights, that you coordinate and implement or oversee the implementation of the Declaration of a Human Rights City. I learned so much myself. I'm curious to know also the other colleagues from other cities, if you have any questions or any learning points. For me, what was very interesting is how you treat human rights as a cross-cutting work for all policies, social, environmental, and the importance you give to human rights education. That's really very, very good to start. I have not any idea about the human rights districts. That's something very new for me. It's very innovative to hear that one district can be a human rights district. So that's really such a good information. Of course, the trainings of the employees, that's very practical. So we have, yes, the same with human rights districts. Esther Pardo from Barcelona. You want to know a bit more about the human rights district. And also Sabine wants to know how independent the Human Rights Office in Vienna can operate from the politicians in the city council. And a good question from Marinka Marquez about what challenges you are facing to monitor human rights in Vienna. So 3 different questions. Thank you, everyone, and keep coming. We will give Shams now the time to address these 3 questions.
Okay, subject districts, it's not quite new. I mean, Istanbul has some human rights districts, and we do have some different human rights districts in Sweden and also in Austria. We started this subject 2 years ago because we thought city is, maybe it is still a higher level in compared to the districts level. City of Vienna has 23 districts, and just my deputy and I myself, we visited all of the districts during the summer, and we spoke about the idea of it being a human rights district. What does it mean? We prepared a concept for the district. That what does it mean? It means if the district has like child or youth parliament, or if they have they work with the seniors, or if they have some inclusion programs for integration of the migrants, or if they do have some programs for extra programs for homelessness, for instance, in the city, or if they do have some shelter projects in the city, but the communication of the shelter project to the inhabitants of the district, because we do have this, there is some protests against these shelters usually, or just for youth, migrants, or asylum seekers in districts, or just what they do. We try to have the stakeholders, and we do have some workshops that because of COVID, it postponed all of our projects because we do need the presence of the NGOs, we do need the presence of the civil society members over there, but at least we have started with some symbolic projects. For instance, in one of our districts, that it is a district with 5 or 6 very strong religious centers, like it is from history, it's a Jewish district. We have started with religions and the dialogue with religions, and 22nd of August, it is the day of the International Day of the just against the political prisoners because of their beliefs or because of their just ideas and religion, and we will start to have like a way to go with the politicians this way and visit all of the centers in order to have the different religious minorities, I could say, together and tell that we are city, if we are Jews, if we are Muslim, if we are Christian, or which kind of Christian, just very basic subject. And we do have an action plan for each district. This action plan, we have to we support the district's mayor and the Boltzmann Institute for Human Rights. They are with us in our contract and they work with the districts. And of course, we do need a face from each district for human rights in order to get in contact with the people, and people, they need to have a face. People, they need to have politicians and everybody, but still a face that it is the human rights, and I can tell him or her what we do need. So independence of the Office of the Human Rights, maybe you can believe it, but it is within the structures of the city of Vienna, but none of our politicians, they tell me do that or just it is actually the work of how can I say? It's my duty to tell the politicians what is the problem in our city, not that they tell me that do this work. So it is maybe just without any, how can I tell, just law or just something that it is written. But if the declaration is approved within the city council, it means that they gave me responsibility to implement, and they never come to the idea that they tell me, no, it is censor and you shouldn't do that. So it is clear that Human Rights Office, we act as an independent office, but it is something that, again, it is a huge challenge that we speak about the just position of the human rights cities within the structures of the administrations. And it is something that we have to we cities, we have to speak about that, and we cities, we have to find a way in order to just consult with our politicians. Monitoring. We don't have any example of monitoring of a human rights city for the time being. There is none of the cities that they have really started with a serious monitoring. We have discussed with Boltzmann Institute, because we do have Boltzmann Institute for Human Rights. It's an independent institute for human rights and research and application institute. Just how we could take this subject. From one side, is it a subject that we are going to implement the city, just to monitor the city as a whole, as a human rights city, or we do have the monitoring of the Human Rights Office and the action that we have, areas of action that we have in the last years. There is some subjects that we discuss, but we have started with one thing that very important. It is the international reports that each city or each federal state with the national level, they they give it to Council of Europe or for the Commission or for the United Nations, and all of these reports, they come and they go through my desk. So we have started, if it's the right of the child, the Convention of the right of the child, or just for Istanbul, for the time being, we know it's very famous because of Turkey dropped this contract. What does it mean for our city? How many just actions that we have taken, or just if it's implementation of Greta report that we have for the Council of Europe. We have started with this approach, or UPR, the Universal Periodic Report that we give all of the national levels in once in 5 years. We have started with this national report, and we commit to just to federal level, and we try. And of course, we do have some monitoring examples in our city. It's monitoring of integration and diversity in our city, and we take it how human rights, diversity, inclusion, and just migration has to do, or we take this smart cities monitoring, or we take this monitoring of the equality of men and women that we have in our city.
Yeah,
so
thank you, Shams. I think this is good to know. The monitoring aspect will come back to, I think, because we will also hear from the Fundamental Rights Agency and also from Utrecht some more. And thank you so much. I'm aware of time, so I think we need to go to the next presentation. But it was very interesting. The example of Vienna, definitely such a good example to learn from. I took note of the question from Virginie in Ghent about the human rights in international field. And definitely that's a question to keep for the discussion a bit later. So Virginie, stay with us. We'll have some discussion on this. And also now we go to Geraldine Gil from the EU Agency for Fundamental Rights. Geraldine, such a pleasure to have you with us. Geraldine is working on human rights in cities and is at the core of this development of the EU framework of commitments for human rights. So it's really great to have you, Geraldine. I will start the presentation right now. Please, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. So I'm indeed been for quite some time now at the EU Agency for Fundamental Rights. I work in the unit in charge with technical assistance and capacity building, in particular on the cooperation with the city. So very briefly about the agency. I mean, we are an EU body, an independent body. Our role is to provide evidence-based advice to the EU institution and the member state when related to the implementation of EU law. So that is our focus. In this regard, we are doing surveys, different project research, cooperation activity. We also raise awareness of fundamental rights, in particular through civil society. And we cooperate with a lot of actors. And in particular, we've had developed quite a close cooperation with city for quite a long time. The first project that we had was in 2009 on local communities. We had also a very important project for us on the journey of governance or multi-level governance. The two terms exist. It was really an important project to help us to really involve the different levels of government in involving fundamental rights and understand how much the coordination has an impact on the capacity to actually really deliver on fundamental rights. And we had really very important learning lessons learned from this project on how much the coordination, participation, even communicating about fundamental rights were key really to support the implementation of rights. During that project, we had really strong cooperation. We learned so much with a lot of cities on how themselves they were addressing human rights and fundamental rights. That's where we started also this cooperation with Vienna. We had cooperation with Utrecht. I see also Gianluca in the chat from Torino, Barcelona were there. So we had really strong partnership there that continue after that important project. So for us, it was really a fundamental step into that, into understanding how local authorities can and are implementing human rights. The concept of human rights in cities, I mean, it sounds very abstract. I think Sham already demonstrate very well how much there is an evidence into that. Due to the closeness of the city with people. That's where people live in city, because of course with the more urbanization that is continued to grow. So that is a given, and I think all of you are already an actor in fundamental rights because you are already developing so many activities to support the inclusion of Roma, the integration of migrants, supporting people that are in vulnerable group, working with young people. So there are so many angles that you already are tackling in your work. But yet the concept of human rights or fundamental rights is not so often linked to activities that cities are doing. And that in that sense, there are different elements into that. And I think frequently there is a perception that people in the city were not really related to the concept of human rights, that they would, and it's true that it's partly the case, but I think it's this has changed, and in that regard, there is something that I would like, of course, to address later on in the context of this presentation and the discussion. But fundamental rights and human rights are also an obligation. That's a reality. The states are, of course, at the national level, they are signing the convention. They are the one contracting the obligation, but that includes all levels of government. So that includes also the local and regional authority. So there is this responsibility to implement human rights. What also we learn in particular during that project on gender governance is also that when human rights is implemented, is often implemented through very particular policy addressing specific group. So in a very fragmented way. And that was, of course, you can reach maybe more easily a particular objective. But it's not necessarily sufficient to address human rights more broadly. And that I will come back to that later on. Coming to maybe the next slide, the movement of human rights city is, of course, an international movement. And in the context of the UN, with the urban agenda, with the Agenda 2030 and the Sustainable Development Goals, the role of cities has been quite recognized there. But it was not necessarily the case at EU level. And I think those two, the urban agenda and the implementation of the SDG, has really been quite a game changer in the role of city. Plus, of course, the development of networks that has increased the role of cities in the discussion on fundamental rights issue. So I feel that, of course, in the recent years, there has been some change at EU level. And that has been really quite recently reflected in the new strategy presented by European Commission on the application of the EU Charter of Fundamental Rights. And the EU Charter of Fundamental Rights is the Bill of Rights in the European Union on fundamental rights. And in the new strategy, the presence of the local level is much strengthened. In the origin, the first strategy to develop the use of the charter has been really focusing in particular on EU institutions to make sure that EU institutions were really fulfilling their responsibility in fundamental rights. And the new strategy is focusing on the member states, and that includes the local and the regional level. And that, I think, will be quite a strong evolution. And that will also be linked to further funding that will support the cities and activities in fundamental rights. but also other related policy, for instance, on sustainability. There is clear links that are being developed related to the importance to promote environment policy, but also with the social dimension. And when, for instance, the Council conclusion refer to the social dimension, they refer it with some links to concrete human rights aspect. So the interconnection between environment, social, human rights it's quite evident in that sense. In the next slide, so basically, how did we started this process? So we had this cooperation for several years with the different cities. We have really developed with our flagship event, the Fundamental Rights Forum, in 2016 and 2018, really close cooperation with Vienna, with other human rights cities. We've showcased quite a lot of work that the cities are doing in human rights. The Vienna Plus 25 conference also that took place in 2018 actually look into the human rights city practice and really call at the time all human rights actors to engage more with human rights city, to learn from their practice, and also to try to amplify as much as possible and support this initiative. So in 2018, we decided to really look into further that, and we've organized it as a parallel session of the Vienna Plus 25 conference, a policy lab in 2018. And at the time, we explore what kind of cooperation with the FRA could be envisaged. At the time, the idea of a framework was put on the table. It was not, I hear something strange in my, I don't know. So this idea of the framework was put on the table. We start exploring it in FRA, of course, and with the different partners. We felt, and also the cities were also very frankly mentioning that there is not necessarily a need for a particular new network, because they were already quite strong existing networks in related matters. So of course the idea of having a network was not really so much the objective. But the framework, I mean, basically the idea was quite embraced by several cities, and we started actually developing this project, or this initiative, I would say, towards the end of 2019, where we had an expert meeting at in Brussels, involving different city networks, different also human rights experts that were already involved in different cities. The Raoul Wallenberg Institute, Manfred Novak, I mean, and of course different partners from UN, from the Council of Europe, and we discussed what could be that framework, what it could contain. And we also explore what could be its contribution. And basically what we feel is that it will be a strong way to recognize the city effort in the implementation of fundamental rights. It would help, of course, more cities to be engaged in fundamental rights, because that's clearly there is a wish for many cities to actually do more in the area of human rights and fundamental rights, but it's always complicated to say, okay, where do we start? How can we develop it? So somehow that framework would provide that kind of support. It will, of course, encourage higher standards. It will also facilitate the exchange of know-how, having a common document on which we can base the exchange. And for us, what was important is that within the EU context, we could, of course, increase a bit more the use of EU instruments related to fundamental rights, and in particular the EU Charter. So what are the key elements of the framework? Sham already mentioned a few elements. I mean, committing to fundamental rights is key. I mean, doing human rights in an invisible way without talking about it, I mean, of course, it could be a way to start, but in reality, to have really a dialogue with the population, to raise awareness of people with rights, we need to have this form of commitment. So it's not a long-term approach to consider that human rights needs to be hidden behind more concrete policy term. Then there is, of course, some form of institutionalization of human rights in the city. It's not, of course, so easy for a city to start engaging fundamental rights. And what the practice show in the, really certain tools like having a human rights office, having an anti-discrimination office, particularly human rights budgeting. I mean, there are these elements concretely support the development of human rights within a municipality. Participation is, of course, extremely important, and having consultative bodies, having ways to engage the population, different stakeholders, it's, of course, a strong element of it. As Sham also mentioned, the human rights-based approach is one of the very fundamental tools, I would say, or structure to support the implementation of rights. And having a programming approach, so having a capacity to establish priorities, developing some form of action plan or strategy, developing indeed monitoring and evaluation. That's something that we will be discussing further. So what will this framework be? In the next slide, you would see, I mean, that will be basically around three categories of elements. Bianta, can we go to the next slide? So the framework, oh, is everything okay?
Yes,
yeah,
I see
yes.
the next slide.
Sorry. So the framework will be based on three main groups. I don't see the next slide moving, but I hope it's only on my side. So we will have three components. I would say what we call foundation, which are the links and the reference to the instrument, the human rights instrument. Is everything okay? Or?
Yes, just to check if people see the slide with the table with the.
For
yes,
me, it's not the case.
I see Shams and everyone is nodding. Okay, so I will.
Now it's better. Yeah,
okay.
It's back. Okay, super. Thank you. So indeed, a foundation which will actually refer to instruments, different, of course, convention, some key policy documents. So that will be the foundation. And then structure, which are really also building from the practice. For instance, the declaration, as Vienna and other cities have really committed formally in the council, but also having human rights offices, advisory council, form of partnership. So all of this will be part of a structural aspect into it. And then some practical tools like having mainstreaming human rights, but some city indeed like Vienna used some cross-cutting. It's the same approach, using the human rights-based approach, developing capacity building activity, having an action plan. So having different elements that actually those tools help for the actual implementation and development of fundamental rights. So that framework, so we've indeed started developing the framework, linking also what are the added value for the cities. We are right now in finalizing the content of the framework. It will be released at the FRA Fundamental Rights Forum in October this year. I will talk a bit more about that. So right now we are still in the context of finalizing or introducing some of the latest comment that we've received. We will run into another consultation with our group of partners. So many of you are already part of that group. So I'm happy to tell you that probably early May, you will receive the let's say the final version of the document for a final round of consultation. And we will start progressing with the preparation of the actual output for the forum. The document is foreseen as a policy paper. So it means, of course, to be tangible for the city, but also for other actors to be able to actually build on that for many other activities. And in no way FRA is trying to take ownership of any form of development of the human rights city, in the sense that there are many actors who are actually contributing into that. So what we feel is that this this framework will provide opportunities for more activity, supporting more initiative to develop the first human right in city, but of course the human rights city in particular initiative in Europe. So once we aim indeed at the forum to launch it, but of course to continue working on this issue, will include it in the framework with the city themselves to make it very tangible. So city indeed should embrace human rights, because what the recent fundamental rights survey that was done all over the EU showcases that actually people actually believe that human rights make fairer society for all. So this idea that there is understanding that human rights is far from being a reality in Europe, there has been an evolution from that, from our work. But what is clear is that it's those who are in vulnerable situations, those who struggle, they have more difficulty to see how human rights is part of their life. So that's why it's so important to really look into vulnerability and address human rights there. What is also very clear is that there is still a big part of people in Europe who think that the human rights are only good for terrorists or for really bad people, and that it doesn't have a real impact on peoples. And that's where it's extremely important that human rights is not a theory or not only for extreme situations, but it's also in everybody's daily life. And that's where the human rights city have been extremely concrete, because they are attaching human rights on very daily activities, and that's really a strong also benefit of the initiative. At EU level, there is clearly more evolution on the development of human rights related to the implementation of the EU Charter, the new conditionality on the use of EU funds. Of course, it's interesting to explore how association of city can play a role to promote human rights, and how much existing city networks can link what they are doing to human rights and fundamental right consideration. And of course, it's very interesting now with all the challenges that the pandemic has really brought to a higher extent, is the importance that social policy are also quite linked to a human right-based approach. So I will be quite interesting to understand from on many of your participants what are the city are doing in human rights in the discussion. I will go quickly on the forum in the next slide. So indeed, we will launch the framework at the forum. The idea is to also have an important session with in partnership with the municipality of Vienna and Utrecht on with mayors to address the framework. So the forum will be on 11 and 12 of October. It's the biggest gathering of decision maker and human rights practitioner in the EU on fundamental rights. So we'll have a lot of different partners. It's really a place for discussing really concrete activities to develop synergy, to boost more cooperation, and also call for action. So in that sense, the release of the framework goes very well into this concept. Two overarching topics will be there: young people and the future of Europe on one side, and Europe recovery from the COVID-19 pandemic. So there are these two overarching topics and 6 themes that are listed there. I will not go so further, but of course the human rights city practice could work in every aspect of these themes. The work that we do is very much on strengthening the human rights practice, so that will be particularly there. So that forum will be done with partners who are interested in hosting and developing sessions there. There will be different type of session. It could be panel debate. It could be like tech talks, Connect, Reflect, Human Rights Talk, a master class. It could be in the form of a consultation. It could be in the form of virtual exhibition, and that could include different type, and even on the way art, culture, or sports also fit into social policy and human rights. So the deadline for submitting a proposal is the 30th of April, but I can tell you that it will be very likely extended. But we will communicate on the extension really late, probably on the last day or early May. So I would still suggest, if there is any wish to do that, to submit before the 30th of April. We never know. And finally, so there will be a really strong presence on the local level. If you see on the next slide, we will have indeed already a mayor session or related to the framework. We will also have a session, and we work very much with Sam and Hans on also on operationalizing the framework with the city. But of course, there will be more proposals that will be submitted. So we'll see what will be the other elements. So voilà, we recommend definitely for you to register, to contribute to that forum, either just as participants or by submitting a proposal for session. And I remember, and I remind there to answer possible questions, and I look forward to the discussion. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Geraldine. Such an interesting presentation. You covered so many questions I had, and I've seen in the registration from many participants about, yes, the framework of commitments, the work that is being developed. And I really liked how straightforward your presentation was, and also recognizing that too often city activities are in fact implementing or addressing human rights or fundamental rights, but they are not labeled as such. Very interesting. They are not recognized or not considered. So we can do much more to, yes, to acknowledge this. And also what you said, the role of cities was not enough recognized by the youth, but it starts now to increasingly be more and more recognized and more engaged. And this is definitely the EU framework that will be that is being developed and to be launched in October will help in that regard. Finally, I took note of the conditionality in the EU funding. I think for everyone in cities and also in regional and national authorities, this is something that is a game changer. You need to pay much more attention because, of course, everyone needs to apply for the EU funding. Then and the COVID as well changed a bit the frame and the context. So, do you have any questions for Geraldine? Please raise your hand or include in the chat box. I myself have a question. It came from the registration. You presented a bit the skeleton of the framework that will be on 3 pillars. From the registration, participants wanted to know, how do you measure implementation of a human rights city or progress in achieving the objectives of a human rights city? Especially when there are elements that are not of the city's competence. Maybe they are for a national or regional competence in some areas. So very briefly, because we were going to see the text and it's going to be launched, but how did you think about this idea of the monitoring of the objectives of the progress?
Yes, thank you. And thank you also for highlighting indeed on the issue of competence between cities, which are very different from a country to another. And it's quite an important element. I think what is important to consider there is that independently for the function that are the constitutional function of a city or region, there are human rights activities to do. Even within the limited, let's say, limited amount of functions, for instance, the provision of water, the taking care of the garbage. I mean, all these elements can still have a fundamental right element into it. There are plenty of aspects into that. And I would say also the mayor has such a strong importance in the debate within the municipality, within the local communities, even without not being responsible for or not totally responsible for an issue. There are so many ways where mayors, the municipality can come in to support, to create a space for dialogue, and even create some form of yes, have a leadership role into that, creating that culture of rights that was so much mentioned by not accepting any form of racism that are in the public debate, making sure that issues related to discrimination are addressed. I mean, all of this, independently from on the function of the municipality, has really an important role to play. The second thing regarding the monitoring, indeed, that's a particular important issue. I think we need to also, we have had a few discussions with different networks and different initiatives on that. I think it's important to consider also whether monitoring and evaluation, different aspects. First, some cities themselves, they do some activities, not necessarily in terms of monitoring, but they do report. And there are very good practices from that on that. For instance, the York report on their activities is really extremely interesting and useful. So there are some initiatives that have been put in place. And that whether what the city is doing will be basically their own decision. Huh? The other aspect is in the development of the framework. What was important for when we designed also the framework is to consider it as also a flexible model, because not every city will start doing everything. It's not actually manageable. We aim that the framework can be used by some cities who are already quite advanced, but still want to continue and enhance with that. But some city who wants to start and have a way. So it's not like everything has to be happening at the same time. That is not the way to work. So we have this element of flexibility. What we are still considering, the framework is not going to give a model for assessment or review. That is not going to, we are not going to fix something on that, but we are going to put some recommendation on how a process of recognition could be developed. And that's where also we will have cooperation with different actors, in particular with DNA and Utrecht, also to continue after the release of the framework to work on that. And the idea would be to try to see, to create a coalition of actors who could actually go into test and pilot something building on the framework. And the way this model of monitoring or review or assessment will take, I mean, it's still a bit depending on who wants to be involved, how much the city would like to be involved. Clearly, it needs to build also on things that exist already. So, for instance, many cities are already reporting to maybe Eurocity, to the ECA cities, to ICC, the Intercultural City Program, already on their own activities into that. So the idea will not be to replicate or to. So it needs to feed on existing initiative. It needs also to be relatively manageable and simple, and it needs to be used. The result needs to be used. And one way that we could mobilize a bit more cities in doing that is indeed by going towards some form of label, of some form of recognition at EU level, at least on the city's work. And that's something to go, but I don't want to push too much because I know that Hans will probably be touching these elements.
Well, thank you very much, Radin. You touched upon many points. I was very happy to hear that the framework will be a flexible tool to allow different cities at different starting points to join and be able to progress. But those that are more advanced already, but also others that are at the beginning. So not all at once. I really liked this. It's not discouraging anyone, but really encouraging to embark on this journey of a human rights city. And that's why I was happy to see Helsinki, Sud Nitin, sharing in our chat box the work that Helsinki is doing as human rights, and also Stephen on the York Human Rights Indicator. We'll come back to both Helsinki and York after the presentation from Utrecht. So Hans,
maybe if I could mention a couple of, just one thing is that what is really important is indeed the exchange between cities and the exchange in a very frank way. And I think that's also what we wanted to create within our cooperation, is that the capacity for city to express where they are struggling in a very, because that's not something necessarily that is on the open, but needs to be really frank on this worrying, being where to start and how to go about it. And I think, and also to release the pressure to be perfect from the start. It is a process, as Sham was mentioning. It's a process. Being a human rights city is not necessarily the only way to deal with human rights in at the local level, but it's a choice to have it in a very comprehensive way. And that has really been a strong element. I think from a country to another, there is also different elements to consider, different actors. For instance, in Sweden, there has been a platform of cities also to support the process and the exchange. I know that in the Netherlands, there is some kind of similar platform that is being explored on that. In Norway, there has been the National Human Rights Institution has developed a project on human rights at the local level, and we will be supporting human rights city as well. So there could be different ways and different actors within the national context also that can support that. It's not necessarily that every city is on its own. So that is also quite interesting.
Excellent. Excellent. And then we'll, very good that you mentioned this, Geraldine, because we have an example from the Netherlands in Utrecht. So we'll hear from Hans how they work within the Dutch context and also at international level, and that's also very important because also with Eurocities in terms of monitoring, we are thinking of developing an urban monitor of social rights, but in fact it's human rights. So we have to see how to best develop that in later this year. So without further ado, Hans, you now have the floor for the presentation from Utrecht. Utrecht has been a human rights city for at least 10 years, I believe. So it's quite a journey, and I'm sure you have lots of lessons and experiences to share from these 10 years. So do you want to start? We can try again with the video, or we leave it at the end?
Yes, well, let's do presentation first.
All right.
The video
you're sharing the screen, right?
Too much of marketing, and I will share my screen, isn't it? Yeah.
Yes, please.
I will try if this.
Excellent. Now, at least I can see it. Yes, it's just great. Excellent. So you have now about 15 minutes for the presentation.
Yeah, well, I will try to tell you a little bit about our approach, and you will find some differences, but also some similarities. For example, the round tables of Vienna, we also have round tables, but you also will see that we are really need the process that the FRA is now developing to help us to make next steps. For example, we are not good at all in this mainstreaming, in the implementation, in the administrative structures, like Shams has told about, what Vienna did, and have a special commissioner, or we don't have budgeting, we don't have an overall mainstreaming, but we have more the focus on a kind of local coalition with all kind of stakeholders. And what you see in the first slide is an exhibition in the public space trying to tell the story. And this was for us also an important quote of Eleanor Roosevelt from 1958. And it's symbolizing the homecoming of human rights, because for at least in the Netherlands, human rights is very much associated with over there, far away, with Congo, Chile, Cambodia, and not at home in our own streets and schools. And perhaps to start with this quote, where, after all, do universal human rights begin? In small places close to home, so close, so small, that they cannot be seen on any maps of the world. For us, the FRA project of the joint up governance was the moment that we start to realize that it could be something that was an inspiration for our own city. In the moment that well, I got a phone call from the FRA in 2009, I think, is your mayor coming tomorrow? And I didn't know anything about it, but I say, well, this is interesting. He's not coming tomorrow, but we will keep in touch. And this project started us to help thinking how, together with the ministry and NGOs, Amnesty International and the university, was for us the beginning of all the things we already did to keep it, well, to redefine it, to reframe it in a new, for us in that moment, a new framework. And that was the start of a process, and this really, it takes very long to get to know what it could mean for your own organization, your own city. And this was one of the first exercises in 2012 that we started doing a local human rights assessment on 10 policy areas. And we try to describe our policies and concrete case, and we try to make a balance in right-wing topics and left-wing topics, and then make an evaluation on all these possible charters and declarations and treaties in the world of human rights, and then make an assessment and evaluation. Is it good enough when you look through our local policy through the lens of human rights? And we sent it to the city council. Well, that was for us the beginning, the first exercise in make it a part of the policy thinking. And we still have this kind of thinking, that we have a deputy mayor for human rights, that's Linda Fortman. We have two deputy mayors that are responsible for the social affairs, and that's Maarten van Ooyen is the chair of the Social Affairs Forum, and Linda Fortman is more explicitly responsible for human rights. And this is an example of how to make every year a new priority list. What do we want to put really on the agenda and make steps, next steps forward. This was during the FRA project, one of the most important moments, because we were very, well, we didn't do, and we still try not to do any marketing on human rights, because we say this is a utopian program and we are never good enough. But the opening of the National Institute of the Human Rights was, well, it is based in Utrecht, and it was opened in a big theater with 1,500 people. The Queen was there, and Mrs. Pillay, the High Commissioner of Human Rights, opened it with the words, well, it's so nice to be here in the first human rights city of the Netherlands. Of course, it's not an official title, but it was a kind of a joke. But it was also a little bit more than a joke. And from that moment, more than 1,000 people started to know working in this field of human rights, the concept, they heard about the concept, well, a city could be a human right, a place of human rights. And from that moment, we couldn't, we had to become more explicit in how to become a human rights city. We had some during this process, because the first 2 years we did a lot of work in training of civil servants together with Amnesty International. We did this assessment. We did to try to start the first monitor, but it changed after this first period to a more focus on a coalition with stakeholders, and the municipality is only one of them. We defined it more as a cultural process and a process of human rights education. And we say, well, if people not aware of human rights, it will not work. So people have to know them. So human rights education is key. And it's very complex concept. And so we need the university to help to explain in all parts of your society. So we have done a lot of cooperation with the university and all kind of department of university, and we still do that. But when you compare it with the approach of Vienna, this is not the most serious way to go. It's more storytelling. It's try to bring it in the local society. Then there is in all the discussions about what kind of strategy we choose a little bit the position. Well, it should be an inspiration. It should be an idea for a better solution for the future policies. And we haven't done so much in correcting ourselves and improving already existing policies. So it's a kind of, there are two interesting examples that we went to court against our national government, based on to the European Court of Human Rights, claiming the right on the local for taking care about homeless people, undocumented people, undocumented children. So we won these cases, I think also together with Amsterdam and some NGOs. And that is still for the, in Dutch, the bed, bad, brood discussion, an important moment. We try to keep it a very neutral language, not to, because we are aware that it's can be very sensitive, but we try to put it on the political agenda without politicizing, we call it. And that we say human rights always there for everyone, all the time, for left and right ideas, and that shouldn't matter. And well, Geraldine mentioned a national platform. Actually, that's not existing. We have some contact with Amsterdam, with Middelburg, but the other 400 municipalities not working explicitly on human rights. So making strategies together is difficult on the national level. So we need international sparring partners to come forward. I will show some impressions of what this is about. This are the same round tables Shams showed in Vienna. And here you see all kind of NGOs and all kind of interest groups having a common umbrella and telling their stories and also using each other to make it a bigger movement. This is the website. It's you can change the language in Google Translate. So this is the French version, but we have an agenda. All kind of organizations put their activities in a common agenda. We have social media, we have blogs, and it's in fact the platform for local initiatives under the umbrella of human rights. And then in Utrecht, the refugee issue and welcoming migrants has been all the time one of the core movers of why do we want to become a human rights. So you always have need good examples why it is something. What is the additional value of human rights? And this is also with the court cases on the European level. This was really during all these 10 years, the most important example to tell the story. But we also try to have long traditions of St. Martin, also cultural roots with Tour and other cities in Europe. That there is a long-term interest on the local level for a more deeper awareness of what is human dignity and worth is really about. There were a lot of discussions in the last 6, 7, 8 years in the Netherlands on post-colonial issues, slavery issues, the Black Pete discussion, and what we did also is a lot of cultural interventions to start or to accelerate this discussion and to set new norms. This is well, there were a lot of actions. These are only 2 pictures of things. And things changed very much the last years, and some things are really not done and that were very common 8 years ago. We have this public space, human rights education, telling the story, inside, outside buildings, always together with all kind of organizations. We call it kind of human rights landscaping with city tours. There are many cities having now the slavery tours, underground tours, children right tours, and so to have this awareness that's around us. In our case, that was a very important part of becoming human rights city. The LGTBI issues are in Utrecht, but also in Amsterdam, of course, an important accelerator of the story behind human rights. Intersex agenda in this moment for this year we picking up, but also all kind of funny issues to promote new rights and that it's not a stable package of rights, but it's developing itself and is also a way of telling the story with new groups in a new way again. And the city council became more and more aware of, well, yes, a human rights city. And you found in the last years some examples that they say, well, but when we want to be a human rights city, we also have to be children rights city. So there is a reasoning in that you get a step further, and I think there are a lot of other cities not calling themselves human rights cities, but they call themselves still children rights cities. Also very interesting to reach out to them. And children rights is a very interesting example, because children rights is very, nobody's against children rights. And so it's not a very politicized issue in a way that there are many people against it. So it's for promoting human rights cities, children rights cities are very important. A shelter city with our social affairs forum chair is his responsibility to giving shelter to for 3 or 4 months to human rights activists from around the world. Is part. So in here the international part is clear that we need each other internationally to create a movement to learn from each other, to see that other cities are a step more forward, and that we see that there are all kinds of dimensions in becoming a human rights city. And at least in the Netherlands, it's very difficult to do this on a national level, because it's not in the air, so we need international partnerships. And what to express this was the slogan that we promoted since in our meeting in Geneva, organized with the UCLG, Amanda Flaty, and the Committee for Social Inclusion, Participatory Democracy and Human Rights. And here we said, together also with Vienna, that for the first time we should have a bigger international movement to make it to give more backing to the few cities that are really trying to use the narrative, and say, well, let's have an impact on the 2030 agenda, the SDG agenda, that we try to make this movement of 100 cities on this moment worldwide to make it a 1,000 city movement in 2030. And therefore we need a label, because without an official, more professionalized label with a kind of framework of commitments, that will not happen, because nobody knows what it's about and how to do that. So we, in the middle, our other deputy mayor, Linda Voortmans, she is now one of the co-presidents of the Committee for Social Inclusion and Human Rights. And this is where we, also like to put our energy in, and to help this movement to come forward. And this is to see perhaps to end an important place. It's in Gwangju. The city of Gwangju is organizing every year a huge human rights city forum. Very important in Asia, but also for the rest of the world and cities. And their commitment is giving it a platform that we also can use in Europe. And they also have an interesting human rights monitor, so we can learn, especially from York, I think, about more and what the work of Paul Grady and co, and the colleagues from Gwangju, and of course the city of Graz, or the University of Graz, is also a good example to look at. I think this is my presentation. And,
excellent. Thank you so much, Hans. In perfect timing, I have to say. So much information you covered. I was very impressed about the work of Utrecht, and I found that Vienna and Utrecht have had a different starting point in becoming a human rights city, if I understood it correctly. For example, Vienna started from the institutionalizing of human rights, having a human rights office in place, and you started from the coalition of stakeholders and putting efforts to bring all key people together to discuss human rights. On the other hand, there are, of course, a lot of key points in common, like the human rights education and awareness raising, and the efforts you did for using human rights for better policy making. So they're so fascinating to see also the differences, but also the commonalities between your cities. Now, please, if you have questions about Utrecht, put them in the chat. But I see also there are other cities that have things to share, and that's really, now we will take half an hour, the last half an hour of our webinar, to discuss and share. Wait, I will share the PowerPoint, if you see it. No, doesn't matter. So we will discuss now a few questions. So now first, to break the ice, let's go to the Slido. My colleague Elisa can put again the code for the Slido human rights and the link. And you shall see a question we want to ask you. Does your city apply a human rights-based approach to your local policymaking? Just to see who we have in the audience and where's your starting point. You can use slido.com and put human rights as a code. You'll be able to see the question. And we have the first answers. Yes, not yet, but we are working to develop it. No, or I don't know. So it's going to be interesting to see, at least from your self-assessment, if your city applies a human rights-based approach. And then we're going to discuss how, in which way, and we already have a few cities that can share some experience. Yes, we're going to wait maybe an extra minute. So far we have a lot of yes, which is not surprising given that the webinar attracts people that and cities working on human rights. Excellent. We also have some cities that are working to develop a human rights-based approach. Or maybe for you in particular will be this discussion is very useful and the whole webinar. Yes, let's wait for a few more entries. Okay, so we have the majority by far apply a human rights-based approach, but some cities also are working to develop, or they don't have yet one such approach. And one more question before we go to the discussion. Is your city using or applying the EU Charter of Fundamental Rights? In a conscious way, of course. Yes, no, not yet, but we want to start work on it, or I don't know. Interesting to see, because the first question is a bit broader and the second is about the EU instrument we have at hand. I'm really happy that many of you jumped on the Slido. It's really easy to use. So now we see, not yet, but interested to start work on it, is the majority of answers. So definitely good motivation also to put into practice what we learn in this webinar. Maybe that's something that also Geraldine can take back or confirm from the survey on the use of the Charter of Fundamental Rights that was last year, where I think it was the same. A lot of responses was that cities or local authorities and regional authorities do not use the Charter of Fundamental Rights as much as it could be used. That's why it triggered the recognition of the role of cities and the more focus. Okay, so not yet, but we want to start work on it. No, and just a minority, yes, good. Now let's start to discuss. So we have a few cities already that shared. We'll go back to Helsinki. Helsinki, it was Sud Nitin that you shared in the chat a bit about the work. You have an action plan, work of Helsinki. In a nutshell, could you share with us in a couple of minutes. How is Helsinki working on human rights? I understand you have not declared yourself as a human rights city, but you do work a lot on human rights as the core principle. So please, what's your approach?
Hey, thanks first of all for a very interesting seminar. It's been really interesting and thought-provoking to hear your presentation, and I have gotten so much out of this. So my name is Nitin, and your question is kind of broad right now, so I'm trying to answer shortly in 2 minutes in a nutshell about our work on human rights. As I shared, so you can find most of the information on the websites, but shortly so for us, it's been quite recent now working on human rights issue, adopting this course of applying human rights at the local level. As has been discussed during the webinar, human rights in Finland has been also seen largely as a state level issue. That's something that the state promotes and advances. And for us, our approach for human rights has been now starting especially from non-discrimination and gender equality point of view. So we are promoting human rights specifically to support the rights of marginalized residents in the city of Helsinki. And as you can see from the website as well, right now, the focus largely has been on gender equality and non-discrimination. And that's the starting point for us right now. And we haven't really, so obviously human rights issues are obviously much broader, and as discussed here, tackle social and economic rights and the issue of human trafficking and different aspects. But for us right now, this has been the starting point. And we haven't really declared ourselves as a human rights city. This has been mainly to promote our non-discrimination, gender equality work and adopt and also realize that cities, indeed, when they're offering services, education, social health services, that's also a fulfillment of human rights in a way as well. But yeah, this is kind of shortly. So that's been our approach right now to support, especially to promote gender equality and non-discrimination. We think human rights is really the excellent tool to promote this. And right now, we are also planning of working on a human rights action plan. Right now, the action plan is called Non-Discrimination Action Plan, but the new plan will be a human rights action plan. One question that I had, perhaps, if I can also ask here from other cities is, and regarding also the human rights cities framework that has different tools, is about within the city, when we talked about also perhaps discussing some of the difficult issues that come up, is one of the things is about human rights mainstreaming and budgeting and things like that. But how do we make sure, because there's a lot of I wouldn't like to say competing trends, but different trends going. So we have, for example, we need to have environmental budgeting. We need to have a specific gender equality budgeting. We need to look the budgets for example, different perspective or when it comes to digitalization as well. And obviously human rights is something that's a cross-cutting issue that should be foreground. But how do we, in a lot of ways, human rights is being seen as a niche thing. It doesn't become like a mega trend. I don't know if you really understand this point of view, like actually, I think it's easier to see, for example, now post-corona recovery has been seen as a mega trend for local authorities. But how do we make the human rights perhaps seen as actually a cross-cutting theme and not, I don't know if you get my
yes, it's like how do you really mainstream it across policies and keep it there as a priority when others come, like COVID, like you're saying, transitions to green energy. Excellent question. I couldn't have asked myself better, because this is also maybe what Utrecht and Vienna can share from their journey to become a human rights city. How are Utrecht, Hans, you said that that's maybe a challenge you're still working towards, to mainstream better human rights. How are you working on that?
Well, in our case, there is the concept of human rights is politically no problem. So we have deputy mayors, the city council put it in the city council program for this 4 years for the first time. So there is a political commitment that this is important. In the city, in the stakeholders, and the NGOs and the university, we have a coalition, and there is also a lot of enthusiasm about talking in this narrative of human rights. But the problem is, of course, that we have an administration in the municipality of people not want to use terms like SDGs and human rights. So all these United Nations frameworks are too far away for, and we had a process of decentralization in the Netherlands that the state give responsibilities to the local. And people say, well, but we just got the responsibility. We now are the center of the world and not the national or the international stage. So there is an tension in concepts and struggle how to see it as a help and an inspiration for making better local policies. In our case, it's
very interesting that you have the political buy-in, but you need the buy-in from the city officers across. And how is it in Vienna, Shams?
I mean, for mainstreaming, you need from one side top-down, from the other side bottom-up processes. And we were so lucky because top-down and bottom-up, they met somewhere in the middle. And so it came to the final position that we are going to be a human rights city. And please don't forget the role of media and social media and print media over here, because during the process, the city of Vienna, we put a lot of budget for mainstreaming human rights in our media. And just very important and serious newspapers and magazines, they interviewed the political side, they interviewed me, and there was a lot of TV program, and there was a lot of, just we activated media in order to listen and to hear that human rights city is a new subject. And we did it, and of course we put a lot of money on that, because it was our goal to make it visible for everybody that we want to be a human rights city. And
that's a good tip.
Yes, we do have, our media through the city of Vienna, and we do have for the departments every day about noontime, the news from the city administration, they come to everybody in the city. And it's a kind of consciousness building for the subject, and we use everything that it was possible. Even last year, for mainstreaming of human rights, my office and my team, we just painted a bench for human rights on a very maybe it doesn't sound very intellectual, but just we have a bench of human rights in a very mostly frequented part of the city, or just the human rights place with the artistic intervention that the place for human rights.
Excellent.
Or you have a place for the right of the child. So you have it to just, it's a consciousness building. It's a subject that collective work, and just one or two people, they cannot do it ultimately that we are a human rights city. So you need everybody in the city.
Great ideas, Shams. Thanks a lot, because indeed we have to use different tools, political buy-in, trainings and awareness among the state administration, but also media, arts, films, like Vienna is doing, and really keeping an eye on human rights, bringing it into the public eye all the time. So we go now also to Bilbao. Alasne from Bilbao shared that the mayor has developed a charter of values with participatory process. Alasne, if you can summarize in 1-2 minutes, what is this all about, and how new is it? It's the first time I hear about it.
Oh, thank you, Bianca. Thank you for giving Bilbao the opportunity. It's been very interesting to know the experiences from Vienna and Utrecht, and also the guidance from the European agency. So I would like to express the gratitude on that side. And I think that it all started 2.5 years ago with the current Mayor Aburto's commitment, and through a participatory project with more than 500 interviews. there were 17, not at the beginning, but just at the end, 17 values that were decided by the citizenship, local stakeholders, institutions, and from that charter of values came together in a parallel way the Bilbao City of Values project. That includes an action plan, awards, and other activities to raise awareness, training, and so on. So, I mean, this is the most recent action related to and based on human rights, but Bilbao's commitments comes obviously from long. And we also joined the Declaration of Fundamental Human Rights some years ago. And we are also recognized as age-friendly people and children-friendly, not people, sorry, city, children-friendly city, I meant. And linked to these target groups as well, more recently, we have also supported through Eurocities the principles 11 and 18 related to children and seniors within the European Pillar for Social Rights. And social services, but overall generalistic services in Bilbao include the perspective of human rights. You know, I think that Bianca, you might know the guide of intercultural cities that has been recently launched as well, with the perspective applied to public administration projects. And we are also now at this precise moment linking and evaluating the best way to interact both projects, the Bilbao City of Values and the implementation of SDGs, because it happens to be both of them 17, not the same ones, but at the very end they are focusing on facing the same challenges in the city, in the city of Bilbao. We do not have a specific human rights office, and I couldn't be able to set a particular starting point, but I think that we have a good experience and we love to share with any city that might be interested in.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Lasna. And you linked with the pillar of social rights, the European pillar of social rights. So that's very interesting because of course, there's a lot of cities in Eurocities that are very advanced on social rights, social policies. We just don't maybe call or relate to the human fundamental rights. That also maybe links to the EU and how the EU discourse is evolving, because now everything's about the pillar of social rights. And yes, there's not maybe as much discussion of the EU Charter of Fundamental Rights, so maybe there's something more to connect there as well. I'm just flagging it. We also have Barcelona. Barcelona is a self-declared human rights city, and I read in the chat that you have a human rights resource center. Who wants to? Maite or Esther Pardo? Let's start with Esther and then we go to Maite.
Thank you very much. It's been very interesting all this meeting. Yes, Barcelona is a human rights city since 20 years. I think we began with this work, and the Human Rights Resource Center is meant to do to work with human rights-based approach, and I would like to focus on that because we have a methodology guide to apply the human rights-based approach to public policy, and it is available in English. I would put it in the chat. Maybe I think it is pretty useful. It has an example of the way to work with housing in the city, which is one of the most important topics we have worked on. For example, with the census of people, in Spanish we call it padrón, the registration that everyone has to do in the city to use education, healthcare, and all of that. So people who don't have a fixed house where to live or any documentation to justify it, the mayor has created a way to register people without this documentation, so they can have access to health and scholarships and all of that. And it is explained, it is in this guide that I am going to post, and you can read and use when you want.
That's such an excellent resource, because there were some participants already in the registration asking, how do you apply human rights to social policies? And wow, what a great resource you have to share in English from Barcelona. We're so thankful. We're going to disseminate this further. And we also have Maite from Barcelona working directly on housing. Maite, please.
Hi, this is Maite from Barcelona Municipality, working for the housing agency. And it's just a question I have for Geraldine and the other cities, and it's to know if they have planned to support any sort of advocacy strategy for cities towards the EU, and how this is foreseen, and if this has been practiced in any city or anything like that. Thank you.
Advocacy on housing, the right to housing, perhaps, or in general?
In general, I mean, in any right of the fundamental rights charter and so on. Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much, Maite. Geraldine, so how is your relation, for example, with the other EU institutions, with the Commission, the Parliament? What would be the next steps after this framework of human rights cities, let's say, is launched? How will it become a tool that the EU institutions are, promoting?
Yes, thank you for the question. I mean, what we do as a EU agency cannot be labeled under the term advocacy. That's not really our role. And in that regard, we've always thought that the city themselves are the best advocate on that aspect. So that from the advocacy part, we really leave to the city, and there are of course different networks who are already also supporting. I mean, basically what you're doing in Eurocity, you contribute to that. UCLG is of course also a very strong place for that. So in that regard, we cannot really look at it on the work of the FRA in that context, but in the context of our work, we certainly address really the positive aspect. We really address the practices from the city, and we really emphasize the importance of having more human rights in the city, why it is so important. And that comes also from many years of actual research that comes from different activities that we had on Roma, that we had the pleasure to present on a few occasions with Eurocity, with our work on integration of migrants, with the work on equality and fight against racism. I think there are so many contexts where we have actually concrete evidence on the importance for the local level. So what we are doing is that through that framework, we hope that to create a momentum at EU level, so really a much stronger support for cities in general. So in that regard, we are very active on the implementation of the charter. We build capacity, in particular at the national level and the practitioner. But of course, we are learning into what is needed in order to see whether there is something that we could do more. But so we definitely communicate on all the benefits. We are promoting the practice through different channels in the context of our cooperation with EU institutions. But I would not characterize this in the context of advocacy, and that really don't hesitate to do that directly. And
but thank you, Geraldine. I think you made a very clear point that FRA is an ally of Eurocities, of UCLG. We have to support each other, and you're already doing a lot to, let's say, shed the light on the role of cities and bring more focus on the role of cities at EU level, also through the framework that you're going to launch in October. So I'm conscious of time, so we are running towards the end of the webinar, but we have two more interventions. So first from Turkey, Bahar Özden Gözgün. You've been very patient, thank you. Please share with us, what do you do in Turkey?
Yes, thank you very much for this opportunity, and thanks for the great presentation, Shams, Hans, and Geraldine. So I will try to be very brief. In Turkey, we are running a Human Rights Cities project with 7 pilot municipalities, but it's an initiative of the Raoul Wallenberg Institute's program. So we have developed a framework building a link between the human rights and capabilities approach, and we have developed indicators, mainly relating human rights with municipal services for accessibility, participation, and safety security. So we have published in Turkey, and very soon it will be translated into English, and I will be able to share it with you. But just a very small experience from Turkey, how to localize, how to go one step further to localize the human rights at neighborhood level. We had just an experience implementing a city lab together with the neighborhood people. I mean, around the park for the design of for the co-design of a park to improve the accessibility, inclusiveness of the park, and so the municipality was hosting this activity, and I can say that it was a very successful experience to concretize how a human rights city could look like, and how could a process look like. And I will also be sharing this guideline with you all in the coming future. So
thank you so much. Yes, please share with us. Yes, share. I will disseminate to everyone in the webinar once you send to us. Very interesting developments you are doing, and also how you apply it at neighborhood level to concrete policies. Yeah, that's amazing to also have your perspective. We also have with us, I don't know if still with us, Mr. Benoit Pilet from Angers-Loire Métropole. Mr. Benoit Pilet is the deputy mayor and has very recently been elected at the governance committee of the Council of Europe. I don't know if Mr. Benoit Pilet wants to also take the floor and share with us how you are taking yes, the lessons from cities to the Council of Europe. Maybe he left. We do not see him anymore. Okay, then we go to, finally, we give the word to, let's see if Sabine from Amsterdam is still with us. Sabine had a critical reflection just to put things in perspective. Yes, Sabine, please.
No, it was not meant as a critical remark, but it's just what, of course, is my remark is in the chat, and it says that we have to be careful that, like is happening now with SDGs, human rights are not easily ticked off. Had to say, well, we do this and that, and so we are, you know, we are doing everything we need to do as a city and to become a human rights city. And so what I really mean to say is, in our language as a city of Amsterdam now, we do not use human rights so much. That was actually a political choice of the current city government, but in practice, also considering the fact that we have quite a green left-wing government at the moment, we do a lot that you could consider the implementation of human rights. So that was at the core of my remark. So it's not so much about language, it's much more about what you actually do in practice. And that's why this session and the interventions have been very interesting. For instance, it was very nice to hear the intervention of Vienna. We are also considering, that's where my question came from about the independency of the Human Rights Commissioner in Vienna, of setting up a human rights office like New York has done, which is really independent from the city government. So there are different models you could consider, and I might come back to Vienna to learn more about their experience. And so it was just a remark about language is not enough. Yes. It's all about the
Thank you so much, Sabine. I mean, you spoke my mind and my words, because in Eurocities, it might seem that human rights, we don't have a working group, we don't have it written as a priority, like you're saying. Amsterdam is doing the same, but we do, as Eurocities, work on so many topics that are human rights, in fact, and also what we do with the social rights, with directly working with the Parliament, the European Commission, and with the agencies. But in fact, yes, what maybe we should continue doing what we do, because the work is important, the implementation is important, but do not forget to from time to time also mention these are human rights and we should protect them as human rights, like the right to housing, the right to food, and so on. I fully agree with you. And last but not least, Lucia Fresa, you've also been patient with us, and you have things to share from Bologna. If you could summarize in 1-2 minutes, what would it be?
Of course, thank you. First of all, it was very interesting, and it's a pleasure to see some of you with whom we've been working in the last years. Bologna adopted a local action plan. The city government adopted a local action plan on an anti-discriminatory administrative action and on human rights of migrants, of new citizens, actually in 2018. So we adopted this plan through a participatory approach, both inside the administration in a cross-cutting manner, and then going outside. We are doing the same thing at the moment with regard to local police. So we are developing a specific local action plan on human rights of the local police, I mean, by the local police. And this is wider in scope, so it's not targeting only new citizens, which was very interesting. I share the challenges that have been mentioned already, and we are developing the next policy document for the next years. Because the first one we adopted in 2019 will end this year. So we are in the process of adopting a new policy document wider on human rights and anti-discrimination. Thank you.
Excellent. And please share with us once you have it. Let's keep this discussion. And once the cities that took part in this webinar, if you have any recent developments, you can send to me and I will circulate to everyone. Finally, if Mr. Benoit Pilet wants still to take the floor, he has the final word. I understand he is connected, but I'm not sure he wants to take the floor. Okay, so Geraldine, then please.
Yes, thank you. Just quickly, there was some reference to the fact that indeed several cities have different ways of doing the human rights city approach, and it's not that there is a right or the wrong way, but what we wanted to do with the framework is to give a bit more indeed a better sense that is a more common element into that, but also to make sure that this aspect of responsibility is not only purely linked to what the city wants to do and can do whatever under the label of human rights. So it's very important into that. The city can develop the way they want it. What is really important is to make sure that indeed the obligation also remain there, that the sense of where we're going, it's still going in the same direction. So our focus has been also really on the duty bearers. So there could be cities who develop also through business, for instance, through different ways, the human rights city approach and develop the culture. But really the framework in that sense aims to really emphasize the role of the municipality as duty bearer. So I think it's very important to look at it, to look at the framework in that regard. So it will not really address all the other aspects into that. The second aspect is that it's very much on the local level, and what the cities who have been human rights city for a long time show is how much the local coalition is important to make sure that there is a real sustainability into the process. So that is extremely important. And finally, on the EU Charter, I'm happy that some cities have mentioned that they have a link or developed some links to the EU Charter, and I'd really recommend you to send information to me, because we are communicating through report on the implementation of the Charter. I know the Commission is looking for good practices from the local level, so there could be visibility on what you are doing quite quickly at the EU level. Thank you very much. It's been really a very fascinating discussion.
That's good to know that we can collect and send good practices on the use of the Charter at local level through the cities. Finally, to wrap up and to close our webinar, final slide of question. Now, after all the discussion, 3 presentations, now what do you understand? What does it mean to you to be a human rights city? If you had to boil it down to one word or one phrase, after all this, what would you say? You can type in the Slido, and I'll take the opportunity to thank everyone. It's been a pleasure to discuss and learn from all the cities and from the FRA. As a next step, I mean, Geraldine mentioned you will be consulted, you have the opportunity to be consulted about this EU framework for human rights cities. You have the opportunity, you're invited to be part of this FRA fundamental rights event in October, 11 to 12 of October in Vienna, when the framework of human rights cities will be launched. And yes, hopefully more of you are inspired to embark on the journey of a human rights city. Yes, that's really pretty much it. And again, if you are doing something related to action plan, strategy on human rights, fundamental rights, applying the EU Charter, send to us, me, Geraldine, we will be in touch and we will disseminate with everyone. Now, look at this beautiful word cloud. What does it mean to be a human rights city? It means to fulfill an obligation. Going back to what Geraldine said about duty bearers, it's about accountability, accessibility, respect and dignity for all, equal opportunities, inclusiveness, coherence, peace. Yes, all of this for sure. And a city with and for all. This goes back to the coalition of stakeholders, bringing people on board for implementing, protecting and promoting human rights. So thank you so much, everyone. It's been really a pleasure. We will share all the presentations with everyone and the recording from the webinar. You'll hear from us very soon. If you have resources that you haven't mentioned in the chat box, send them to me, like from Turkey or from Bologna or so on. And yes, also Turin has been very, very active. Send to us and we'll do a nice compilation of all resources so that we can inspire each other and learn from one another. Thank you. Thank you again very much. And I wish you all a beautiful day, a lovely day, and see you around. Bye-bye. Thank you, Shah.